Sensitivity is intelligence. With grace and skill, you have abundance. Welcome to the Psychic Hour. Host Kelly Brickle is a psychic medium healer, numerologist, and teacher. Her passions are learning about the soul and energy. Whether it's through spirit, emotion, or vibrational numbers, there's always a pathway of information waiting to help. Now, here is your host of the Psychic Hour, Kelly Brickle.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a Psychic Hour special Monday episode. Every once in a while, we have it on a different day, a different time, but it serves the weekly, lovely, inspirational offering of just a warm message from a guest, whether it's one, whether it's many, however you are inspired. Our guest today is Anthony Mrocka. He's a wonderful psychic medium, and I'm going to introduce him when he comes in. He does platform, he does one-on-one readings. He's just an all-around terrific guy, and it's wonderful to just talk to him about what his current views on mediumship are, and he has such a wonderful story. So I'm really happy to bring him to the show. And today, what we'll be diving into as our topic is going to be environments. What an important topic. Always have one of the week. And environment is so important because it really shapes us. You know, there's that nurture versus nature concept of, you know, what really shapes us. And science really does back that both shapes us. And if you get into, I'm getting technical. If you get into epigenetics, there is that debate which was crumbled because nature, yes, accounts for some, but nurture actually turns our genes on and off, our expressions. And that is due to the environment. That is due to, you know, the foods we eat, our, you know, environmental stressors, environmental helpers. It is our friends, our family, our choices. Our choices turn off and on certain genes. Certain genes can't be turned on or off, like maybe our eye color or certain conditions we have, but actually far more are influenced than we realized. Or even the way our body regenerates and heals, it's due to how our choices are made. There's a lot of backing that goes into this. Some great resources are Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, and also one of the many books by Deepak Chopra really go into what is needed for an ideal healthy state of the body and how our environment can shape how the body does indeed heal, because many organs within our body, they shed and they regenerate every so weeks, months, or even years. Like there's, you know, the body repairs itself in certain cycles, and all of this is thoroughly tested. And if you have stressors in your environment, your regeneration is delayed. You know, the body can only deal with so much. There's so many things that you can juggle. So this quote, I really, really like it. I stumbled upon it. It's your environment can be an amplifier or a deflator. And just think about that for a second. Think about kind of the most fun you've ever had, the most inspired you've ever been, the most passionate you ever were. Was it solely because of you? And that is a question to consider. And the answer is probably not. It's because you were somewhere amped up, right? You could have been in a crowd and everyone was just like, oh, they're ecstatic, they're feeling it. You know, it could be because they're vibing to the music. It's because there's a speaker present and they're like, oh, you know, like this, what a great message. It could be, you know, a peak fine dining experience where you had the best pizza or the best wine, whatever, right? whatever like was just the peak. And that's due to the chefs creating that. That's due maybe to not even the food completely, but your company with the food and how you were feeling that night. And that's all due to the environment. What makes a home cozy? Yes, it's the objects in it, you know, the decorations, but it's also the feelings inside the home. And that comes from people. Okay. And even if you're living alone, your home comes from the environment that you make. It's an expression of yourself, it is a mirror of your own energy. And you further that, where's the environment your house even is? Think about the neighborhood. Think about the city. Does it support you? Do you feel like it holds you back? Okay. All super important to consider because the environment around you does influence the environment that you can create sometimes. Sometimes people feel like they're very independent of the environment around them and they create like a sanctuary, a temple, right? Let's say they don't have harmony with their neighborhood, but you walk into their house or you have friends that come over and they're like, wow, this place is beautiful. Like they don't even expect it. Like it doesn't match the neighborhood. It doesn't match kind of the rest of the street, right? You walk in and it's just like eclectic or attention to detail, or sometimes it's just the energy. Sometimes you can walk into someone's home and you're like, wow, there's such gentle energy here. There's such warm energy here. Wow, it just feels so good to be in this room, right? So the cool thing is, we are all co creators in this world, and we have every option to shape our reality, therefore, shape our environment. So, if you are in a circumstance where you can't completely choose what your environment is at this moment, if you are gaining the momentum to choose more, right? If you are gaining your expression, if you're gaining your power, and right now, let's say you only have one room, or maybe you only even have part of a room. You have to make something sacred. You have to start enacting your self in the space. Because in order to survive, we have to be connected to self and thrive ourself, or we start defaulting to the environment around us. That's why it's so important to have healthy and harmonious. And when I say harmonious, people that not only do we resonate with, but are on the path that we are working to achieve, that we keep each other going, that there's similar beliefs, there's similar respect. There has to be some type of maintenance and growth in ourself and in our relationships. And that is a sign of a healthy environment for such things. So I encourage you, if you do not have much space, if you do not have many options, if you're starting from square one, and again, I'll reference certain teachers that I think really highlight really important concepts. I remember I was in a Sonia Choquette class, wonderful teacher, highly recommend her. And she was talking about sacred spaces. And she referenced this story of this woman who attended one of her workshops. And she didn't have a room to herself. She shared a room. And I don't know if it was with a family member or a spouse. I'm not sure. But she shared a room and she just didn't quite feel very in control of her life. And so where she started is she made a shoebox sacred and she put in all the items that she had, whether they had significance or whether she bought them and they recognized something within her, right? They helped amplify a feeling within her, whether it was a stone or, right? And she would take that shoebox, she'd go over into the corner of her room and she would take out that shoebox and she would amplify this sacred energy. And it was all right with her. And she filled up her space First of all, it was just an idea. Second of all, then it was a shoebox, and then it became her, and then it became the room, and it started becoming her life because she had a place where she could co-create and amplify, right? And the stronger that we get, the more confident we get, the more knowing that we are deserving and that we are capable of changing where we are for someplace better, that we feel like ourselves. Because if you feel like yourself, you found your equilibrium to a certain degree, right? That's for sure. And when you can feel yourself, my gosh, possibilities just start opening up. And when you feel yourself, you start to feel your spirit. And when you feel your spirit, when you're in touch with your soul, that's when you start getting the guidance. That's when you start getting the ahas. That's when you start getting like, wow, life is so much bigger than me, but I can step into that. I can step into that. And honestly, my life has just started. So just some information of inspiration through that of it doesn't have to be much, but we have to start. And so without further ado, I'd like to start and bring in a warm welcome to my friend Anthony Mrocka. Anthony, I want to welcome you to the show. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Anthony. How you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing good. It's great to see you.
I know it's been so long, right?
Yeah. Gosh, I think the last time I saw you in person was 2014
Was it?
in New.
Are you? I thought it was 13. Was that 13?
It was 13 when we were in class with
Yeah.
Lisa, and then it was 14 for just a small amount of time in New Jersey, The Journey Within.
That's right. I forgot you were
Yeah,
there. You were at Tony Stockwell's, right?
exactly.
Right. Yep.
And there were so many people that class, always kept
Yeah.
busy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just life goes by with a blink of an eye, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, some days when I think, I'm like, wow, that was that long ago. Like that's gonna be 10 years next year. You know what I mean?
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. I didn't think about that for a second.
The first time we ever met will be 10 years next year. I mean, we're almost halfway through the year, technically, when June hits, right? We're 6 months in. So before you know it, it's been 9.5 years since we actually first met face to face.
It doesn't feel like it at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it
Crazy,
at all.
right?
It does. I want to introduce you to for the people who are tuning in for today. So for those who know Anthony or are just meeting Anthony, Anthony is a psychic medium. He is a wonderful platform medium, a medium that does one-on-one readings. He's a teacher. He's a mentor. He works with so many different people to understand about their mediumship. And he really dives in deep and he works with the individual as well as people who reach out. And you always do it with such heart, you really wear your heart in your sleeve. So he's a fantastic teacher for anyone who's looking to as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. I want to dive right into with you. I know a little bit about you, that's for sure. I want to ask about like how did you get into knowing you wanted to be a medium? What led you there? Did you have some abilities as a child? Did you even know that you were sensitive? And how did you work through that and come to the moment, yeah, I think I'm going to try this?
Yeah, that's a kind of loaded question, really, for
It
myself.
is.
Only because it's not something that I ever thought I would ever do. This is not something that mediumship to me was not like I set out to, or I felt I was going to be a medium. It just, for me, it started happening after getting sober. And it wasn't my first time either that I got sober. So it was like, wait, why didn't it happen before? But this time, I've have my past story of drugs and addiction is a major issue there for me. So most of my life from early, probably 20s. I mean, before I was 21, I was already in a rehab. So I do remember that. So most of my life I've been centered around either like an addiction or a 12-step program. So I did get sober multiple times. So I wasn't a first-time winner of either. So I kept going out and relapsing and stuff like that. But unfortunately for me, that a lot of my friends passed away from addiction, from drug overdoses and stuff like that. And so what had happened really is that there was a time that I had gotten sober again, or I needed to get sober again because I knew I've lived a sober life before. And I started praying. And this time I always, the funny thing is too, is I've always believed in a power greater than myself, but just not so much the organization of religion. So I believe in God there. And I knew that this power was out there to help. And so I started praying. And through that prayer, that's when weird things started happening to me. Literally like synchronistic things started happening to me in some way. And from that, I was like, from praying and having these synchronistic things happen to me, I started to see and hear things that were not of this world. I taught myself how to meditate. I was asking, my prayer really was asking God, why am I here type of a thing, to use me as God. And I say God as a he or she. I know that some people say he there, but I see the masculine and the feminine. And so I asked him, why am I here? Because like I said, a lot of my friends, unfortunately had passed away from overdose. Now I was in my 30s at the time, and I just couldn't get it. I've crashed my car head onto a telephone pole. I've gotten shot at by a police officer here in New Jersey, and I should be dead. Besides those things, through addiction, I had major physical symptoms. I had a urinary, bladder, and kidney infection all at the same time. There was blood coming out of places that shouldn't have been on my body. And so in and out of hospitals, and here I am still alive, and all my friends were passed. And so that's it. When I started praying that simple prayer, that's when everything started to change, like the synchronicity really took over. And I had no idea what synchronicity was then. I had no idea what synchronicity was. But people started coming out of the woodwork and started saying these messages to me, and things were just like, like the dots were just like kind of falling in place. It was just weird. And the next thing I know, I taught myself how to meditate, like I said, and that's when I started seeing things that I didn't understand. And the beauty of that was that it's not really the beauty, but the funny thing of that is I can't tell anyone I'm newly sober. You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to tell people that I'm hearing and seeing things that are not of this world now? You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be like, this kid's back on drugs. You know what I mean? He needs to go back
from
away.
one predicament to another. It sounds like.
Yeah. So from that's what I'm saying is, it was this aspect that it's not something that I ever thought of, wanted, or any way. But I believe in the soul, and I believe in that we have some sort of kind of mapped out destiny if we choose to follow it. There from the spirit world, from coming here from heaven to here. There we live here and then go back home. And so from that aspect, that's when everything started to happen. Now the funny and the other part about it is I was extremely skeptical. I remember seeing John Edward on TV probably, I always say 20, it's probably 25 years ago now. 25 years ago, and on crossing over, and I clicked, and I was like, those people are paid actors. Click, you know what I mean? And I changed the channel. Like, that's how skeptical I was about any of that stuff until someone asked me to go and to an event, a DEM, really, a gallery reading. And I was like, when the person said, "Oh, you want to go see this medium?" And at the time, and again, this is going back. I mean, I was in my 20s. I'm in 40 now. I'm in my 40s now. So this has got to be over 20 years ago. There, at the time, they did them in Barnes and Noble, believe it or not, here in New Jersey. So they would, in the center of Barnes and Noble, there was a section. They would set up chairs, and they had the medium come in and would do the gallery reading right in Barnes and Noble. So it was like, whoa, all right. So this woman that I was working with at the time asked me if I wanted to go down, and I said no. I laughed again, which I said, "Well, what's a medium?" And she said, like that guy John Edward. I was like, those people are paid actors. But later in the day, it's always so interesting to me. The reason the story is later in the day, my mind changed. Like, and I didn't do that. So I credit now the spirit world being able to work potentially with our thought pattern in some way, because that was at like 10 a.m. She asked me that. She left work at 4:30. And I remember going in and seeing, I'm like, wait, you still going? She's like, yeah. I'm like, you know what? Save me a chair. I think I'm going to go. It was close to my house. And I did go down there, and I did go to this event. And the second person the woman called on was me. And I had to stand up, and she told me all these things that was coming in from my grandmother that I couldn't understand. How could she possibly know? Like, things that were happening then in my life, not just about evidence of my grandmother, but things that I just did there. And I was like, what is this lady? Like, how? That's impossible. How did she know that? So it made me start to believe that there's something, you know what I mean? And then I followed up with a private reading with her there. And so I did become a believer somewhat, but I still had my skepticism even when I started my development, there in that way. And I think any healthy skepticism is good, but I had a very skeptical mind, and I still do, and this funny thing is I still do, because for me, that's why I always say for people, for me, if they ask me questions and comment on specific things, I tell them I need experience. I need experience for me to believe things. And so
Yeah.
it was after having the experience of starting to seeing and hearing things that weren't of this world, I knew I wasn't crazy. And I knew it was like, I guess it was like a newfound toy almost, and I was like, I got so excited that I kept wanting to meditate. Like, my friends would go out on a Friday night. I'm newly sober. And I'm not talking about my friends that party anymore. I had a group of sober people too. I've been in and out of the 12 steps, like I said. As sober friends, we would go to a meeting and maybe go out to eat or a diner or whatever there. And I was like sitting home, like I would sit home, and I just wanted to meditate. I literally just wanted to meditate, because I was trying to recreate that same kind of experience again, that of seeing and hearing those things. I was like, what is going on here? So from the experience of that's when I started to believe. But for me, like I said, it was after I started, I guess, doing practice readings too. It was the evidence that was coming through was correct. And that's what made me start to believe even more, right? That I wasn't just making something up, and the evidence that was coming through. But the funny, I always say this story too, because there's a funny thing. Like, the first woman that ever helped me, she came out and told me. Now, I was already having these experiences, and I went down to see this woman's thing, and out of my mouth came, I asked if she taught classes. I went to her gallery, and out of my mouth, I was like, where the hell did that come from there? And sure enough, she said, make her, book a reading with her. And I did. And she called me about 2 weeks before her reading, and she said to me, I know the reading's an hour, but, plan on spending 90 minutes here. I want to talk to you. And I said, okay. And afterwards, we talked after the reading. We talked, and she said that she wanted to help me. And so I said, sure, and my skepticism went, how much, and she said, nothing. This is what I'm being told to do. And I was like, oh, okay. There. So looking back even at that, like, if she would have said $100, my mind, that's why I say I feel like the spirit world's always so perfect in some way, or who they can use, whatever. My mind would have said, there's no way, this woman just wants my money. You know what I mean? But she was like, nothing, come here once a week and blah, 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 blah. But the reason why I'm saying this story is because so she taught me how to read, feel energy through crystals and stuff like that. And through the process, she never actually taught me how to do a reading. And the funny thing is, for the whole time, I thought the dead were just going to show up in front of me. Like, there was just going to be this time that, like, someone was going to be in my hallway, you know what I mean, with like a police officer uniform on. And then if I had to do the reading, they were going to show up, and they were going to show me, oh, here's my badge number, and here's the tattoo I have. You know what I mean? It was like, I had this weird concept of what mediumship was. And that's why I come back and say, it's just not something that I ever thought I would do. But here I am.
You had no reference points. And even when you were developing, you kind of just had to let the energy build and be what it was going to be, because, there were certain expectations in place. You were saying, I expected somebody to be there. And when you had your teacher for, that first initial moment, she was just teaching you about feeling energy first, right?
Yeah. The basics. And if you're like me, I want what I want when I want it. Like, I wanted to start talking to the dead. You know what I mean? Where are you? I wanted to see guides. I wanted to see angels, whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever the divine. I wanted to see it. And so here I am holding crystals, and I'm saying, what the hell am I doing here? You know? But you start with the basics.
Hey, fair enough. I mean, to definitely empathize with how you started, I came into this work being skeptical too. I actually was like, this is really cool. So I'm going to dive in and I'm going to either, have a journey to help others bring truth and light and disprove all of this and be an advocate for it, or I'm going to show people like, okay, it's real. And I kind of, when I first started, was like, this is probably not real.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But life just thrusts you into it and you're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's true. Even the psychic stuff, like I know the terminology psychic, right? When you just say psychic, I mean it comes to this like stereotypical, crystal ball lady wearing this thing on her head, and those people are bullshit. Or you have the the boardwalk, or maybe New York City or whatever cities you're in. There sometimes they have the little shops and the gypsies, unfortunately, there. Only I say unfortunately only because most of them are not real. You know what I mean? But when you said about that, even too, like with the psychic aspect, because as a medium, right, we're psychic too, right? We're sensitive. We're just really sensitive. We're sensitive to energy, so we can pick up on psychic information. Which again, I know the word now is intuitive. People like to use intuition and intuitive there instead of using the word psychic. But the thing with is for me was when I started doing psychic readings, and that's how I started, actually, believe it or not. After that woman, I did work with that woman for a while to learn how to read energy. And then I was kind of coaxed in, like my friends like knew I was doing this, working with this woman. And I remember one day we were coming back from a diner, and diners are big in New Jersey. I know they're not everywhere, but they're big in New Jersey. So we were coming back from a diner, and they, we got back to, they were driving me home, and we were sitting in the car, and they're like, oh, just try, and I was like, try what? They're like, just try to do a reading, and I was like, okay, well, at the time I did psychometry. I didn't know I was doing psychometry because I didn't have a clue. I just asked for the woman's bracelet. She gave me her bracelet, and I put it in my hand, and I held on to it. And in the beginning, I shut my eyes, and I just really concentrated on the energy. And then all this information started flowing through me. And the next thing I know, I opened my eyes. It was like an hour later.
Oh, wow.
And I just spat out stuff for an hour about her life. And she looked at me and she's like, how do you know all this stuff? And again, the reason why I'm saying this is because I was so skeptical. And here I closed my eyes. I'm holding this thing, again, doing psychometry, not knowing that at the time there. But I gave her all this information about her life and potentially what was coming up. And those things that were coming up were validated. Like over the next couple of months, those things started to happen to her. And so it just brought me back to the whole thing. Like, there's something to this, right? There's something to this. You know what I mean? Like, how that wasn't from me, but it feels like that, right? It feels like that sometimes. You're like, am I just making this up? And
Absolutely.
And then after, eventually someone asked me, like, my name got to someone, like, a couple of my friends started asking me to read for them. And then my name got to a hairdresser. And this woman asked, could I do a reading for her? And sure enough, I said, sure. She came by and I did an in-person reading for her. And a lot of it was the psychic stuff. And so really with it, next thing I know, she's telling everyone, right? And the next thing I know, I'm getting these texts for readings. You know what I mean? And I was like, what's going on here? And so the interesting part of it is, like I said, because of the psychicness, then all of a sudden, after people started coming and just texting me for readings, this is before Facebook was, was huge or has so many, like nowadays we have so many, there's like practice circles and mediumship development, stuff like that. None of that stuff was out yet there. I had asked, this woman, I did a couple of readings for her and her friends now. And the next thing I know is people are texting me for readings, and I'm saying, I just feel like I'm making stuff up. But all of a sudden, those same people that I read started to come back around a couple months later. And when they would come back, I'd be like, why are you here? And they're like, everything you said to me came true. And I was like, seriously? And it started again. I needed that experience to start to see there really was something more that we're tapping into. You know what I mean? We're tapping into an energy potentially of a consciousness or the collective consciousness there, and we're able to kind of read energy and bring things forward. You know what I mean? In the psychic aspect or intuitive aspect, with mediumship, evidential mediumship, the funny thing is, like I said, it was for a while. Those are the types of readings I did. And then the first, first deceased person showed up in a reading, and I was like blown away. I was like, who's John? And they're like, that's my dad, and I was like, he's passed though. He's like, yeah, And the next thing I used to actually feel the pain, and I got this like shooting pain through my stomach there, and I explained it to the person that, yeah, that makes sense. And she told me after that her dad unfortunately had a hernia in his stomach that ruptured, and he never went to the doctor, and unfortunately he passed there, kicked off all his issues there. So and then the deceased started showing up in my readings there, and so I started at psychic stuff, and then they went over to mediumship, and then it was after that. That's when I was still working a regular job and stuff, and that's when I found Lisa Williams, and that's when I met you. Right, we met in Chicago in Lisa Williams' class back in 2013 there, and I was going there to like, is there really something to this? I still was unsure. You know what I mean? Like, is this real or is this not real? And I guess I'm gonna go find out. And so that was like my first group experience there, and I think it was very eye opening. For me in that experience of that week, or I think it was, I know we did the platform class too. So I know there was like 3 days, it was like 5 days or something like that.
It was 5 days. Yeah. It was a long, went by so quickly, but I honestly feel like it was a month I was there. I don't know how to describe it, anything other than that. I learned so much, and the days were so jam packed that literally I felt like it was the next month, because I'm like, I've been here for far longer than 5 days. We were probably doing work in our sleep.
Yeah, it was like, I felt like it was like boot camp.
Right. Yes. Really did. Yeah, we just had to keep going, exercise after exercise.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was going to happen. But it was life-changing. Honestly, it really was. So while you were at Lisa's, did you have your podcast, or did you go into that afterwards?
That was after. I didn't do anything before Lisa's. Like,
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't do anything before Lisa's. It was, I didn't know. I was, I just like, I was working still, and I was kind of still doing, I was doing readings here and there, but I wasn't doing like a crazy amount of readings at that time. I think maybe 1 or 2 a week, because I was working a regular job. And I really think that was like a make or break point for me with this, with going to Lisa's class, because I never had an experience where it wasn't, it was different then. Facebook wasn't as, popular, or it didn't run the world. It didn't have these groups, mediumship development groups and everything else there. I don't even know if they had groups then yet. So it was like you didn't find people to easily talk to. You know what I mean? So like going to Chicago was like my first real interaction, probably, with a bunch of other mediums. Now, I did live near the Journey Within. And so, Janet and Habbock's church, if for people that are watching that, it's a big spiritualist church here in New Jersey. Janet's an awesome spiritualist, National Union teacher, tutor, Arthur Finley tutor. And so I went to Google, and put in, started typing in stuff, and Janet's church actually came up in one of the searches. And I only lived like 20, 25 minutes from there at the time. And so I used to go to her Sunday service. I was like, let me check this out, and I would watch, and I would go, and I'd sit through the sermon, and then, they would do like a demonstration. A couple of our student, they would do a couple contacts at the end of the service. And I was fascinated by it, and it's always interesting to me now, because I never ever thought, again, here, I do Dems now with Janet and Havoc, and I never thought I would be, here I am, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, sitting there at a church watching Janet and her students work. And today, I do Dems with her, which is mind boggling to me. But it just, again, by seeing it, by being inundated by it, and then like talking to others like you and everyone else in that group. It was a big group. I think there was probably 40 of us or something around there.
Yeah, like 35, like something like that. Yeah, you're in that ballpark for sure.
And I just think like that was like my first, like that's why I say it was like a make or break point for me, because I never spoke to other mediums really. besides I've seen a couple of people work at Janet's church, but I never really, I guess I never got graded, right? Because in the end, if you remember, we went through a test, right? We had to read for someone and it was recorded and at least listen to it there type thing. And now I have, Lisa Williams watching me, she, do the context for the platform there as well and kind of giving me feedback there. So that's why I say it was a make or break point for me, because I didn't know if I was good or not. I had no idea.
I think everything was just so aligned. Like it was so synchronistic. Used that word earlier, how you were like learning what that meant. It just, you were there, you had your questions answered, and you were ready. You were just ready, and it just clicked and made sense. And yeah, you had your questions answered very clearly, whether like, should I be doing this?
Yeah.
And I remember I was in class with you and you were so good, Anthony. You were so good. I had no idea that, that was a question in your mind as well. I mean, I did because it was in everyone's mind. That's for sure. We were all like, we're here, we got to do stuff, or we're put on the spot. But right. But I didn't know that, I guess, just a couple years prior, like you're really saying that you started doing readings.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't, again, that like, it wasn't really that long. That's why, it's interesting you said you didn't know that, but like probably the whole time I'm there. And that goes to the whole thing where I'm pretty, open and honest about any part of my story. I think vulnerability is strength. That's, my belief there. And I share my story only because if someone else is struggling through it, they hear something and say, well, that person could do it, I can do it too there. But like, hearing you say that even too, like, wow, I didn't never realize that. Like I was deathly afraid inside, measuring up, am I good enough type thing. But that's been my whole, that's my life. You know what I mean? And because of through, unfortunately through my addiction and stuff like that, I think like my core thing, one of my biggest fears, I know I've done so much self-development work. I've done so much between 12 steps, traditional therapy, therapists, hypnosis, EFT tapping, inner child work. I've done so much work. I mean, my whole life there. I feel like I've been in and out of therapy in some way. That I know one of my biggest fears is that, about being good enough. So yeah, that whole weekend was about that. You know what I mean? Was about that for me. And I guess it did show me that it didn't, I want to be real clear what I'm saying here. It didn't show me to measure up to other people. It just showed me myself that I need to get that out and really just kind of buckle in and get ready to do not the work. I felt like the work of spirit. For me, spirit made it real clear to me in the beginning that my guys made it real clear to me that this work wasn't going to be just about talking to the dead. It was going to literally shift my life there. And I had to learn a lot more than just mediumship, you know what I mean? Spiritual concepts and stuff like that. And so at that time too, I would read any book that would come my way. It was really weird. My first year, after when things started happening to me, my first year, I couldn't afford TV. Okay. You got to remember, I just came back out of a drug addiction there. I had nothing left. I mean, no bank would even give me a bank account anymore. I overdrew on Chase, Bank of America, and I think someone else literally there. So I was working part-time. My one blessing was I never lost the place where I lived, so I didn't have to go homeless there. I was working like a part-time for a family member at the time, and I was developing. And so that first year, when they turned my cable off because I couldn't afford it there, once I got a little money, I didn't want it back because I was so it's funny. I was listening when I was sitting in the room, you were talking about passion and find things that you're passionate about and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that brought me back to that because books would show up like oddly, like one of my aunts or someone in my family was like an intern on Crossing Over, John Edward or something. And the last day he gave his books out or something. So my aunt like mails me his book, you know what I mean? And I'm like, it just shows up in the mail one day after she hears, after I told my family and they're starting, there's, a little rumble that I'm a medium type thing. And so I'm like, okay, I guess I'm reading this next. And people would like send me books. And I was like, okay, I guess this one's next there. And so I had that, you know what I mean? And so that's why I said from the very early on, my God made it real apparent to me that this wasn't just going to be about speaking to the dead. And it's about a complete life change, there. And I needed, for me, clearly I needed it. I just came out of drug addiction there. And I couldn't, and I kept going back, you know what I mean? So since I was 20 at the time, since I was 20, I was in my first rehab. At that time, I think I was around 32 or 33. So it was in and out of sobriety for years, Yeah.
When you were younger, did you, maybe it wasn't until later that you understood, but do you have memories, I should say, of you being sensitive and just feeling uncomfortable, and that's why you sought something out, because you're like, not feeling very comfortable with these situations, maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed? Like, do you have any connections that you were just really sensitive as a child?
Yeah. So yes and no. So I always say this, because I will say this. I want to say this out loud to everyone. It messed with me at first, only because, right, I don't remember a lot of my childhood because I came through an emotional upbringing. I will share this. My father left my mother for my mother's sister. There when I was 2 years old. There, it's a part of my story. There, when I used to speak in 12-step programs, and that's the same thing. So a lot of that, at that time, because I was so young. So I believe now my subconscious has blocked out a lot of memories. Like even my wife today, I have little kids, and they're now in third and first grade, and my wife's like, "Oh yeah, my first grade teacher," and I'm like, "First grade teacher? What are you talking? Like, how do you remember that?" You know what I mean? She's like, "Oh no, I remember my kindergarten teacher," and I'm like, that's when I started to realize, like, holy cow, I can't access memories back that far. I can't, and I think it's because of the emotional upbringing. I think my subconscious has blocked that out there. That's the job of the subconscious. It will block out all those old patterns, in that way, if they're hurtful there. So my first real memory, I mean, is if I got hurt or something, but I have a scar on my finger there. I got splitting wood in like 5th grade, I think it was. Like, I remember that because I got a scar there. So to answer that, I don't remember when I was real young. And what I'm saying is, what messed me up was that I would read these books, and a lot of these mediums or whoever there would talk about having these experiences when they're children. I'm like, that's not me. That's not, I must not be a medium then. And but looking back, where as I got older, and like high school, I dated the same girl for many, many years there, and I always got the, "Oh, you're too sensitive." You know what I mean? "Ah, you're too sensitive," and I didn't understand that. You know what I mean? Like, I understand it now there, but I didn't understand it then. Or if I remember, there was times where, and this is nothing on my dad, so I don't want to make him seem to be a really bad person anyway, because he's not there. But I remember, like, when my parents were divorced, so my dad would pick me up on the weekends. And I remember one time my dad came, and it was a Friday after work, and I went to go get in his car or truck. And I think I was playing outside, so I had a little dirt on my shirt. And my dad looked at me and told me to go inside and change my shirt. But he didn't yell at me, but I heard it as a yell. I probably felt it as a yell. And I came inside, and I was screaming, like crying. And my mom thought, like, I got hurt. Like, she said I was screaming bloody murder. You know what I mean? And like, she came down, and she's like, "Well, and I was screaming that I was crying that, I needed to change my shirt." And she was like, "What?" You know what I mean? Like, why are you crying like this then? You know what I mean? Like, and I just was overly sensitive. I was sensitive to tones, tonalities. I see it in my kids today, like my one son, I feel like it's like, if I even shift my change of a tone a little bit, like he could see it. Like, he's just really sensitive, and like, I'm not yelling, but it could go the wrong way. And I'm like, I have to watch that. And I'm like, oh my God, I see myself there in that way. But and back then it was so different, right? We had no idea really about sensitivity. I think more children now have there's selective mutism, and there's the hypersensitivity and stuff like that. So I think that we're way ahead of it now there in some degree, but back then we didn't know. And so yeah, I was always overly sensitive, but I had no clue about this. I didn't have psychic impressions. I wasn't able to predict things that were going to happen there. Later on in life, probably in my 30s, right before everything's really started happening to me, I did start to feel my intuition. You know what I mean? And I start to sense things, or I would know something there, and I would say it, and then it would come true, and people are like, "Oh, that's weird," you know what I mean? But I never thought of it. I never thought of it as psychic or whatnot.
How did it start opening up for you where you noticed at that age, like, oh, this is intuition and I haven't had this experience per se before?
I think that it was like a sense of just knowing. I just knew. I just had a, like we talk about claircognizance, where it's just a clear knowing. Like I just had a clear knowing that if I was going somewhere, that I would be 25 minutes late, even though I left a half hour early. You know what I mean? To get there. Like I had a clear knowing that uh, someone was going to, at the time, unfortunately, they're being so involved in a 12-step program, and I've taken men through the steps and stuff like that, and being a sponsor. I used to I was a volunteer recovery coach at a shelter in an inner city in Paterson, New Jersey. There, I would know. I would just know. I would know when people were going to relapse. I knew when, and it wasn't just because like it was a hunch. Like I just got this weird sense of knowing this, that when this person was going to relapse, or if I had a sponsee that was taken to the work, and I would just feel like, oh, they're not going to make it, or whatever the case may be. So I would, and I think really though, what freaked me out was, but I didn't know. I knew then. What I'm saying is, I felt that knowing, but I didn't know what it was then. I didn't know I'm using intuition. I didn't know I was getting these psychic hits or whatnot. It was after I started doing that prayer and stuff like that. I remember one time I went down to go meet my mother at, it was like spring or summer, and outside in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And they have like, cafes and you could sit outside and stuff. And I walked over to meet her, and I was a couple minutes late. She was sitting down, and I walked by this table. And as I walked by this table right behind this woman, I didn't know, again, I had no idea, but I must have walked right through her aura, or her energy, right? I sit down, and the whole time I'm staring at her. I knew everything about her. I knew her fears. I knew her wants. I knew what she was trying to hide. I knew her secrets. And I'm thinking that's why I keep staring at her. I'm like, how do I know this woman? I was a nightclub bartender. And then I also worked at a regular kind of a dive bar at one point, a cop bar actually. There, I'm just thinking like I must know her from the bar. You know what I mean? Like she must have been a customer in some way. You know what I mean? And sure enough, it's never come true. And the next day, I talked to someone a lady who's a psychic, and I was telling her, and she's the one that said like, "Oh, that was a psychic impression." Like you're going to start having things like that happen to you. You know what I mean? Like, and it's going to be weird. And she gave me, she's like, call me anytime. There, I'll always be here to help you there in that way. So that was when that experience happened. I was like, how could I know everything about this person? It was just the weirdest experience. And then I tried to do it. Right. That's when, and then the psychometry came up next. So I had that experience. And then like when they kind of egged me on to try to do a reading was probably 2 or 3 months later. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I can actually set out to do it. I don't have to wait for it to come to me. Do you understand what I mean? Because I was actively trying to do it when they egged me on to do it there. It wasn't like I just walked by someone and I knew everything about them. That's when I started saying, okay, there is something more here.
How did you then utilize that ability? Did you find that you had to turn it off? Did you find that when someone sat down with you officially for a reading, because you were doing some of those at the time, that it just was ready to go? How did you experience that further when it opened up for you?
So yeah, I mean, I think it was. Someone just asked us this recently too. I was doing some dems with a colleague, and we were doing a Q&A afterwards. And I always say this too. I think the question always is that people always ask is about, can we turn it on and off, right? There. And so, yes, I feel like now it's a switch. Back then, no, there, because I didn't turn it on. Like I walked by this woman, and the next thing I know, I knew everything about her. I'm like, what's going on here? There. And like, and here's the other part of that, right? And let me just say this too, because there is ethics and integrity with this work, right? I don't go around purposely trying to do that. I don't want to know your secrets. I don't want to know. To be honest with you, when I'm doing my thing in the mall or store, I'm not on. Like I'm there. Most of the time, like yesterday, I'm in Costco and I have two of my older kids with me, and they're driving me crazy. Can you get your hands off that? Come on, let's go over here. You know what I mean? It's like trying to tune into people. Forget about it. There, but
Exactly.
there's the aspect, right? Is what I say about the ethics and integrity. It is not something that I or anyone, I feel anyone for that matter, should just go into the mall and try to tune into someone. You know what I mean? And because it's like, I think the old story goes is like, that's like a peeping Tom, someone going up to someone's, bathroom window. Why would you go and look in on them? You know what I mean? It's the same thing with our energy, right? Why you shouldn't know my secrets. I believe I had that experience because the spirit world or whoever was trying to teach me at that point. That was my awakening. You know what I mean? Like I needed to have a weird experience like that from get me to start, to believe things there. So at first I couldn't turn it on and off, but then when I figured it out that, okay, here I'm going to do a reading and this is how I can open it type of a thing. And then I would do the reading. It was correct. There, I started to realize, well, there is kind of an on switch here. But at first too, when I would lay down at night and try to go to sleep, right. And, that your mind goes into that twilight state, you're like sleeping, but you're not really sleeping. Like you could hear someone, but you're not really right before you fall asleep. And that's when I would hear. That's when I would hear my name called. That's when I would hear someone try to come and whisper over me. And sometimes I would be like, and I would jump up, and at the time, the girl I was dating, I'm like, did you hear that? You know what I mean? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, come on, you didn't hear that? There was a lady sitting here talking. You know what I mean? And she's like, no, and I was like, oh. And so it was those moments. And there's such a, again, because of my skepticism, I got to figure out why is it then and not, all the time type thing where you could hear it so clearly. And there's a kind of a scientific thing behind it in some way. Like what's happening is like your brain is normally, it's not alpha. There's one above it there. I forget what it is.
It's like normally we're in alpha and beta, and then we go in
beta. So your conscious mind, your normal day, like right now we're in beta there. But as you fall asleep, the brain waves slow there, and it goes to a delta or a theta. Delta or theta are the subconscious. That's when you're getting into subconscious there. So as you fall asleep and the mind goes from beta, alpha, theta, delta there, that's like theta and delta are right at twilight. And so it's easy for, I feel, the spirit world to come in and communicate with us because the mind isn't blocking that brain wave isn't blocking the communication. Because I do believe that communication really happens through our subconscious.
It's so important to also meditate because when we meditate, we can dip into delta, but we're usually in theta, and in those waves, that's where the mediumship and psychic happens.
Yeah. That's why I say to students all the time, the number one thing that's going to block you is your mind. It's our mind. It's like, and it's my mind too. I tell them myself, like I said, they're only because, I still have that. I still have skepticism. No matter what, I still have skepticism. And so my own mind can block that. That's why I say I just need experience to believe things. I don't ever want to take away from anyone's experiences. If I don't believe them, that's okay. It's just that I need the experience to believe it first.
Absolutely. Speaking of experiences, so like in present day, because I really feel like our energy is always changing, the spirit world, and also what we know and what our perspective is, it's always changing. We're always growing. So are there any things that have come up new for you in the past maybe year where you're like, oh, that's the first time that's come in like that. And okay, I'll make sure that, maybe I'll turn that off because now I'm aware that I can pick up on this. How have new things come in for you or certain experiences where like, okay, yep, that's something new?
Yeah, that's interesting too. Only because I are you saying it as a part of like in mediumship development, like with my own development or my work?
Yeah. So like, for instance, maybe during a reading or before a reading, when you're prepping, and you're ready to open yourself up, you're like, okay, that's a new sensation, or I've never had, let's say, energy come to me like that before, or a spirit tell me, let's say, this part about life before.
So I think that over the past, probably since COVID, so it's really about 2 years. It may be right before that. I don't know. I'm drawn to talk about this for some reason. So I always go where I'm drawn to talk about it with it there. So For me, looking at the work, right? I've always dissecting the work in some way because of my skepticism. I've spoken to others about this in some sense, but I started going through this experience, and it was right before COVID, and then as COVID took over, it became more and more there with doing like Zoom appointments and stuff like that. But I started to notice that in my work, I was starting to pick up things that just happened, right? And now the reason why I say this here is so just happened in the sitter's life. There's whoever I was reading for. And the reason why I started to I started to dissect it, not to second guess. I started dissecting it, wondering, am I picking up on it psychically? Am I reading their mind? Because you got to remember, I know what skeptics say about us, because I've been there, but I've also read about what they say there. And so, am I really picking up something psychically? Or am I reading their mind? That's the two biggest things that they say. Or, I mean, clearly they talk about reading the body language, which is absolutely BS to me, because we do phone readings, and I'm more accurate probably on a phone reading than even seeing anyone. And on a phone reading, I don't see anything of the person. So that just blows that whole theory out. But getting back to my point was, I started to get very, very specific details of things, like the person wanted to buy a BMW, and right before I got to the house to do the group reading, like they were talking about that there. They're like, how can you know that? You know what I mean? We were just talking about it. And so I started to wonder, I started to second guess that. And then all of a sudden, I always say this to anyone, spirit is our number one teacher there. When I started putting it to spirit, I started asking and dissecting my work, and I talked to some living teachers there about it. But when I really put it out to spirit, I came to this a couple months later. I went to this group reading, and I did this group reading right there. And what had happened was there was one woman there that I didn't feel like I wanted to read for, but I wound up reading for her there, only because her energy was a little off. But there, sure enough, I have her mother coming through. And the next thing I know, I'm telling her that in the bedroom on the left-hand side, there's a nightstand there. And in that dresser, there's a picture of her mother. And this woman, she's a New Yorker there. I say it out of respect for New Yorkers, because I love you all there. But now, you know what I mean? Like that, like now. And I was like, wait, what? And she's like, no. I know. I was like, no, I'm telling you, in your bedroom, there's a nightstand right there, and there's a drawer in there, right? Yeah. I'm in that drawer. There's a picture of your mom. No, there. I'm like, no, you know everything that's in your drawer. She goes, I know my drawers. I absolutely know everything that's in my drawer. I'm a neat freak. I have OCD. I know. I said, okay, listen, who's Mary? And she said, that's my mom. I'm like, I'm telling you, in the drawer, just consider it. Just consider it. And she says, I'll consider it. Okay. But it's not there. Okay. Thank you. The next day, I drive home. I'm actually driving home, and I'm cursing out the spirit world. Like, what was that? And the next day, I'm with my family. It was a Sunday. I'm with my family shopping, and I get an email from the woman. Not that woman, but it was actually the house I went to was the daughter-in-law of the woman that just gave me this issue. It was her mother-in-law. And so I get an email, and I read the email, and she's from the woman that's house I was at. She said, my mother-in-law went home. I just have to tell you, my mother-in-law went home. It wasn't in her bedroom. It was in her guest bedroom, but to the left-hand side in the nightstand, there's a picture of her mom there. She has no idea. She's flabbergasted. She has no idea, because that picture was never there. And my first reaction was, that woman should have emailed me her apology, not you. No, there. But I started like, okay, cool. All right, cool. I was like, okay. And then I later on, I was like dissecting it again. Why did I get that? Why did the spirit world give me that validation? And sometimes when we're doing things, again, when our alpha or beta brain is busy, I'm brushing my teeth. It's nighttime. I'm brushing my teeth, and I'm still kind of processing it. Like, why did I? And then it hits me like a ton of bricks from the spirit world, again, through a knowingness that woman had no idea that was even there. So I can't be reading her mind, right? I can't be reading her mind. She has no idea that picture's there. It's not in her psychic aura anywhere, right? It's not in her psychic aura there. It can only be coming from one place, her mom there in the spirit world, who I was bringing through and receiving information from there. And so when it hit me, like I go, oh my God, like they just answered my question. Like I've been dissecting this now for months, because I've been having these crazy kind of evidence that things that just happened there to people, and they're like, how could you know that? And I was like, wait, am I really just picking up psychically there what's happening or not? And so the spirit will like prove that to me. And through that process, right, for the past 2.5 years, I would say it's only strengthened more and more. You know what I mean? Of like literally things that sometimes, that's why with phone readings too, I like only because I can't see them there. And sometimes they have something in their hand and the spirit, the communicator brings up what they're holding. They're like, yeah, I have that in my hand right now. And I'm like, seriously? There, because it freaks me out too sometimes, trust me. There. But it's like that. That's like my newest, I want to say, thing there that's been coming up more and more in my work there. And I'm here for it because to me, it does tell me the intelligence of the spirit world, right? That they see what's happening here on this side of life. They know the things that we're doing. They know they're here to guide us in some way. I'm sure they're yelling at us from the other side too at some point when we make some bad decisions. Don't get me wrong. I always think like, what do they think over? Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Even though like we can't hear them there, but I'm sure when we make a bad decision, they're going like that. But they're there to help guide and support us, and that they're still aware of these things that are happening in this lifetime. And that to me is worth, any reading, because it tells me that we're not alone and our families are still here and watching us there, and they'll be there when we get to the other side.
Tremendous healing. And I think that's very perceptive to have your mind so open and curious like that, because connecting to someone's mind versus psychically, let's say another layer in their aura versus getting that from a spirit, it's all a different energy stream. And you found that answer through your experience. Like it just eventually just went. So I want to tune into some of our viewers' questions. There's a lot of people saying hi to Brenda, Christine, Victoria, Charlie. They're all saying hi. Dee Dee, Christine, Teresa, Carrie, so many people. I could go on and on. So there's some questions too that people have for you as well. Would you like to take some questions, Anthony?
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So Christine asks, were you afraid more of living people and being judgmental of you than the dead people talking to you?
100%. 100%. There. For me, I was just talking about this with someone this morning, actually. For me, coming out of the closet the mediumship closet was very, very scary. Like I said, coming from my past of drug addiction and having that, experience, I figured that people were going to be very judgmental. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, like I said, he's back on drugs type thing there. But really to answer that question, I'm more worried about, my old mentor used to say, it's the dead that you have to living. It's the living you have to worry about, not the dead. And I believe, and I totally 100% agree with that. I think it's more the living that I have to worry about than the deceased.
Another question: how did you finally let your guard down? How did you get your head out of it?
Well, that's an interesting question too, because and that goes back to what you were saying, Kel. I think meditation. I used to meditate almost every day. I actually did meditate every day for probably close to a year, 15, 20 minutes. I don't do it as much right now. I have gone back to it though. But meditation alone, I feel like that people don't realize, I think meditation is really a state of high concentration. I know that people think like you're not supposed to think about your thoughts, but you're actually you're concentrating on your breath, and so therefore you're concentrating on your breath, not your thoughts. You're letting your thoughts kind of go by. And so when we worked with meditation, we started, and I meditated and learned it. I started to realize what's mine, what's me, what's in my own awareness and my own consciousness, my own soul, and really potentially what is the spirit world's there. And so that helped me big time to start to realize what's mine and what I'm not, what I'm receiving in some way.
Thank you. Another question is, how did you learn you have gifts? From Christine. How do you know if you have gifts?
Yeah. So I'm going to just answer that in this way too. I think that everyone is gifted. So I don't think that I don't call what we do gifts. I call it an ability. There, I think everyone is gifted. Everyone that's born into this world has some sort of gift, kind of like the meme or whoever said it. Some people never open the package. There, I'm not saying what I'm saying gifted and not everyone. I'm not in the camp that everyone's a medium. I believe that everyone's psychic, everyone can pick up on energy, but I don't believe everyone's a medium. I believe that people are we're born sensitive. We're born sensitive, and not everyone's born sensitive. It's just a fact. There. So, but to go back to what was the original question? How did I know, or how did I?
Yeah, how did you know you had gifts, and how can I know?
It wasn't just a one-time thing. It was having those experiences that I talked about earlier that made me start to believe that there's something more here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Another question is from Teresa. Do you communicate with animals who have crossed?
I do. I'm not an animal communicator per se, but they do come through in readings. And the funny thing is, you would be shocked sometime. I mean, I was in Savannah, Georgia, doing a dem a couple weeks ago, or back in, I think it was March or April. I don't even remember when. There, but at the very end, I was bringing through someone's lizard, a gecko.
I love it, lizard.
And it was giving evidence, like, no, there's two, and they're like, yeah, it's weird. Sometimes hamsters come through. Now, I'm not saying hamsters should come through and talk with me there, but it's like their loved ones bring up animals that are with them there in the other world. That becomes evidential because they had them when they were children or whatnot. But a lot of times, dogs, cats, potentially horses, but dogs, for me, dogs come through a bunch, and they will literally give us information on the evidence of what's wrong with them, how they passed, and stuff like that. It's interesting to me.
I mean, it's amazing, like whether it is a hamster or a lizard, right? If they can say hi.
Or a bunny.
Or a bunny. Actually, Anne Christensen from Lisa's class all those years ago says hi.
Hi,
he says,
Anne.
"Good to see you both. Hugs from Sweden."
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so long. I can't believe it's been that long.
I know. Wow. Okay, we have another question. Any books that you recommend for meditation?
Ooh, for meditation. Oh God, I forgot the kid's name. I was just listening to it too. I think it's Ryan Holiday has a bunch of books about meditation. Those are really good. And there was another guy that's on my Instagram, and I don't remember his name now. He has a whole book about meditation, which is really wonderful. I could circle back somehow and try to post it in there. Can I circle back at some point and post in like a comment in there, and I could try to answer your question. I just don't remember he's actually on my Instagram. I'm trying to look now, but he's not on my feed right this second. But he has a great meditation book there, and also someone that's going to be on my upcoming podcast. David Geiselman. I shared it on my Facebook page. He does breath work and stuff like that. That's something good to get into before you get into meditation, too, to try to do breath work and stuff like that, because you could help you kind of get into an altered state of consciousness too as well. I shared that on my original my Facebook page there, that he does free groups and stuff for it.
Beautiful. Some more resources. Yeah. Someone also asks, you were mentioning like praying when you were, really opening up, and they're asking if you have any prayers now that you still use, or what was that prayer back then? They want to know about those prayers that you use.
Yeah, I mean, my prayers now are from my heart, and I pray a lot to Mother Mary, and because I feel like I had a very, very weird experience with her very early on. That's also part of it, and it made me a believer there in that way. So today I do pray. I pray every day. I pray every morning. I do say a prayer before I do my first reading of the day. The prayer back then, it was interesting though. That's a whole story in itself. Like, it has to do with synchronicity there, and it's always so funny. So I could take religious messages, but not, and take out the religion of it, right? So I could hear a pastor talk, and literally not have the dogma of the religious aspect of it, but I could get the message from it if you understand what I'm saying there. So at the time, someone came out and handed me these CDs from Andy Stanley. I didn't know who Andy Stanley was. He's a Christian pastor out of Georgia. His dad is very famous, and he was Charles Stanley. There was on TV there, but Andy's young, and it was this 3 CDs about stress. Like that's what his sermon was about, and I listened to these CDs, and I was like, something is talking to me. Like I knew something was talking to me. I felt like God was talking to me through these CDs. And in there, Andy Stanley talked about this prayer, and it was just a simple prayer of there. I don't know why you have me here, but I want your will. Please show me what I'm here for. There, thy will, not my will, be done. There, and so it was that. Like I just started praying that, and I actually, I don't believe that you need to get on your knees and pray there, because I think prayer is heard from the heart and through our energy in some way. But back then, I got on my knees every night and said that prayer there, because I was newly sober. Like I said, friends are dying. I had nothing. I was at rock bottom for probably the 6th time. My only saving grace was I still had a place to live there, but I had nothing. I had no bank account, nothing there, and no money, no nothing. And I was just getting sober again. So I got on my knees and prayed and asked that prayer for a week straight. That's when weird things started to show up and people started to get aligned. And next thing I know, I'm in a coffee shop and I met another pastor, and this guy's telling me God's going to use me. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? Like, who is you? It was just weird. It was just weird kind of events that took place. So I think prayer is powerful, and I see prayer as potentially as an intention too, so some people don't like prayer, but they'll do intentions. But like, I think prayer is an intention.
It's an intention. It's an alignment. And, you said like, that's when, things started getting aligned and you aligned yourself. So that,
Yeah.
Put it out there and it will find you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So the last question we're going to take is from Carol. And she says, I'm gifted, but I have such trouble meditating. How can I get unstuck? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, again, go to try breath work, because I think breath work could help you kind of get in. That's more of an active, breath work is like someone actually like bringing you through it and you're doing the breaths and stuff. And I feel like that's going to get you to an altered state. It could definitely help you kind of get into that, a better understanding of what's really yours and what's really not. Like I said, I shared on my Facebook page, my personal page, Dave's information. He has a breathwork group. He does free breathwork sessions for women only there, and it's listed on there. But I know he has a group, whatever. It's all on my page. So if you're, I think you're friends with me. Yeah, it's Carol there. So look at my page and click on that and try to see when Dave's doing a free session. That will help you.
Beautiful. And also a comment for you. Susan says, Anthony, thank you for the comfort you've provided me during a reading.
Oh, it's so nice to hear. Thank you.
I know.
I get choked up when I hear that. Trust me. I'm like, what? There. I don't take compliments very well, probably. There, only because of my own past stuff. Sure. There, but just to hear that again, it's always powerful to hear. It's just, I don't know, it's something that touches the soul, I think, there, because you know what, and I say this to people. I share this part of my story, very openly, only because being a medium isn't all peaches and cream. Like, it's a struggle. It's not a struggle because I can't turn off or there's things that are talking to me all the time. No, we live in our everyday life. We face judgment, a lot of it. There we have people try to come and attack us. There's people that want to talk about. It's a constant thing. It's just like constant thing there. So it's work. It's hard work. And like I always say, this is probably this is something I feel like I didn't choose. I mean, clearly I feel like I must have chosen it from the spirit side from coming here, but it's not something that I actively was like, I want to go be a medium. You know what I mean? And let me just try there. It started happening to me and I couldn't deny it there, but it's the last thing I would have ever chose to do because it's really hard. I feel like it is really hard at times there. So even though sometimes it looks effortless sometimes, but it's not. It's hard. It's hard work. It's hard.
Well, to give some, praise for all the hard work you do again, Victoria shares, I recently seen Anthony and he was spot on, amazed me, the real deal. My sister came through, was great.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you. Thank you for
Absolutely. Anthony, is there anything that you would like to share with the audience too, or let people know about where they can find you or what classes or events that that you're currently teaching right now if they want to learn from you?
Yeah. Right now, anything's always listed on my website. So anthonymrocka.com. There are my upcoming events and classes and stuff like that. I don't have any new classes coming. I'm in a class right now there, but everything is always listed up on my website.
Perfect. Yeah, there's some.
Oh, I do. Actually, I do. I have a weekend. If you're a medium, there, I totally forgot. Me and Cindy Keza, there, we're doing a weekend here in New Jersey, June, I think it's 11th and 12th. It's on my website there, but we're doing a platform. So if you're wanting to, learn groups or get up on stage, it's really a platform weekend, Saturday and Sunday. It's our first one in years. I think the last one was 2019 or 2018. Me and Cindy taught together there. So then COVID unfortunately happened. So I'm extremely excited to be able to teach a workshop again in person there since COVID. And I'm extremely excited to work with Cindy there and teach with her. She's a dear friend and just an awesome, awesome person, a medium there. So June 11th and 12th. It's on either, I think it's on Cindy's website too, but it's definitely on my website. You could find out the information there. Still a couple spots left.
Two great people, two great mediums. Thank you so much, Anthony, for being with us today. Sharing your story, sharing just tips for people. People were ecstatic to see you. So with that said, I'm going to wish everyone a great week. And please go with love, luck, light, and live, everybody. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks, Kel.
Thanks, Anthony.